All right. Heart Sutra?
Together with a great community of monks and a great community of moments absorbed in the concentration of the categories of profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva monks looked upon their practice of profound perfection of wisdom. Beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty inherently. Then through the power of Buddha, Venerable Geshe said this to Bodhisattva monks. After any son of the lineage trained wishes to profound perfection of wisdom, he said that in the Bodhisattva monks suffer Arya any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice activity of profound perfection of wisdom. Correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Emptiness is formal and is not other than the form of formless forms and not other than emptiness.
In the same way, discrimination composition.
Show creature likewise all phenomena of emptiness without characteristics. Unseen states without saying not efficient or fulfilled. In emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition of practice, no consciousness. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. No sound, no odor, no taste, no object to touch, and no phenomenon. There is no eye element and soul up to including no mind element and the mental consciousness element.
There is no ignorance,
no extinction of ignorance and soul up to including no aging, no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation of heart.
There is no
exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Creature, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in perfection. The mind without obscuration and without fear. Pass beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. Buddhas who dwell in the 3 times also manifesting completely awakened, possible perfect complete enlightenment and reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Wisdom, natural great knowledge, unsurpassed nature equal to the unequal, thoroughly classified as all suffering, should be known as true since it is not false. Perfection wisdom is declared to have Om Gati Gati Paragati Hosam Gati Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Bhagavan arose in that concentration and commended Bodhisattva Master. Arya Avalokiteshvara. Well said, sons of lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice profound perfection of wisdom just as you indicated. Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara. And those surrounding in their entire world of gods, humans, adorers, and Gandharvas, highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. Prostrate to the gathering of the kings in 3 chakras who abide in the holy yoga of piercing space. By your powers of clairvoyance and magic, look after practitioners like the mother of your child. There is no. Suppose the Dharma be completely pacified, 8,000 obstacles are pacified. They will be separated from problems and harmful conditions to the Dharma. May all enjoyments be in accord with the Dharma. May there be auspiciousness and perfect happiness here up to now. Saji, Kadisha, Metotron, Reality, Divinity, Sangeshi, to Meto, Joko, Nadashi, Nojoba, Sangi, Jovan, Chonama, Chanchuba, de Dani, Katsuchi, Tage, Chushi, Pesana, Rola, Venture, Sangi, Drupara, Shu, Sangi, Jovan, Sangi, Chonama, Chanchuba, de Dani, Tage, Chushi, Pesana, Rola, Venture, Sangi, Drupara, Shu, Sangi, Jovan, Sangi, Chonama, Chanchuba, de Dani, Katsuchi, Tage, Chushi, Pesana, Rola, Venture, Sangi, Drupara, Shu. Kangi tuzi ni zoni tawa tamchi pambi chere tambi chun tunzi kodam kela chansi Good morning everyone. Kazi nganzu sanzam da sache di nyeba san ra leba tela londa riba tundo sumi yemani tundo di katukti.
Sorry, I'll just get to the actual part of the text. All right, so looking at a commentary for the 5th chapter, which is guarding conscientiousness, we're going to pick up from the end of verse 8, which provides us a synopsis with respect to how wrongdoing depends upon the mind, right? So again, looking at this section, we are looking at the subject of the branches. We began with the first point, an extensive explanation of the way to practice. We're looking at the method for guarding the trainings, guarding the mind. We looked at by guarding the mind, one comes to guard all. And now we're looking at a synopsis of the reason for stating that by guarding the mind, one comes to guard all. Sorry, I didn't share the screen with you guys at home. So we're looking at this section. So the last 2 lines in verse 8 says, thus, in all the 3 realms, there is nothing as dangerous as the mind. So that gives us a synopsis of the whole topic. So scrolling down to the end of this presentation, the summary says, since all faults arise from the mind, all the 3 realms are created by one's mind. There is no threat apart from this.
So similar, similar to Tama Mena, Chitang Keshavan, similar Tama Mena, Eko Karik Tuba in a Diomaras and Jita Yomaras, the similar Yachik and the Toba Mesala, Toba Tatu, Chedevaina, any Karitona, any Namda K de Adopchik, any Sem the Kaswatachik. Sem ge song tang dan di ya which ma tu wai na an kan zam ji la ya che tang bi mich thong yong na ya ani sem la ya ma di shi shi do da ani ji ji na ke de tin ji tin de yong yo ras.
So the section is rather clear. Again, looking at the wording of this verse, it says in the last two lines in verse 8, thus in all the three realms, there is nothing as dangerous as the mind, particularly when we think of the mind being controlled by fear. So if the mind is not fearful, all of that will not occur, but often because of having different doubts, suspicions, entertaining different suspicions with respect to different things, different people, the mind becomes full of fear. And when the mind is full of fear, we don't find good ways of thinking or considering a situation. Our mind is constantly in a disquieted situation.
Pena taji Mutkaukolaya, Samu Tandanti, Norsenamendu, Pigi, Samuya which Tamashidi, and the same Shimbala Soba, and the same Shundi, and so page, and a numerous of Ton de Yatan, or Dindi Yungiorostra, the D one get in the pay, and a Kangamam Shuch, Mimangula Tigioras, to Samulo. Some Tandanji Tony, Yungur Matobe, Susu Mixig, Mission the Mandavich, Numages, Yamdachi Tindi, and the Shenda Mother in the Chadrech, so in the Yomaros.
So it happens to us at times. We become discouraged. And when we become discouraged, our mind lacks an ability to act. And so many of us experience great difficulties because of the mind being made unable to react to a certain situation because of discouragement. So it's a way of thinking. It's not that there is a special person that is inflicting special harm upon us in most cases. It's rather that the mind itself was made so powerless.
Kawilaya Munzin Chedeagi, Nyaranda Jambala Soba, and in Sunday, Samba Chimbu Chanju Sambala Soba, and in Tartuna, and in Tembasan Chumdin, the Kondawi in Bainaya, Karin Nangbala Tennis, and Momozo Sanjiva Res Laundi, and in Chambo Tanjanjik Tony, Susu Kang Tubati, and in Jambati, Nanchin Pem Sombaza. Sanjeva Remado, Susum Matuaji, any searching and launching the Persia, did it so in Maravasra.
It is like that, particularly when we consider the topic of refuge. We consider hearers and solitary realizers, Bodhisattvas abiding on the grounds, Buddhas, all of them depend upon developing a certain way of thinking that is completely honest, completely truthful. And with honesty, and with a sense of honesty, they did whatever was in their ability. Not something that was beyond them, but whatever was in their ability. And through that, they've attained the state of Buddhahood. So it's good to keep that in mind, because we're not here discussing something that is beyond the range of our ability. We're looking at ways of acting in an honest way that accords with our abilities.
I think that call out is not working properly.
Okay. Bingo.
This. These are Pena touching need to do something. Any Susulaya Legosian, Daniel Nibi Lego Sager, the D one Tanji Susulaya, 여주소를 제진 샤자바이나 아니 수수 투거디야 제마트는 차도야지 용도 왔으라 딘자 디마치와지 수수 칸투거디 아니 호다 와다친 로바이나 로 룽아 익스 토니 간지 아니 게위차와 카르 제투고여바디 아니 호다 와다친 로바이나 아니 단디 깔래야 랑 마투와디 몽발에 통에 차도여바디 세우 슈즈로스 홍기 깨우담도 수고다 남들로 유래야 제바이나 베스우 차도 왔으라
So if we think, I cannot do it, this is beyond my ability, we fall prey to laziness of looking down on ourselves. We belittle our own abilities in thinking that I'm incapable of doing such things. So we look at what we can do with our body, speech, and mind when we do our best to cultivate virtuous actions. Whatever we can in our ability, so that on that basis we'll be able to do better in the future. And that comes clear when you look at the accounts and life stories of great masters of the past. This is the way that they have acted.
그들이 직시해서 다들 텐자와기 them 직진한 민용 직지다 마음을 가지미 마음들이 투도스라 직 샘심데 교도지 빠차데 교도지 어딘지 마음부 투도스 된자 그래서 상말로게 원의 단위기 필이야 갈수 없다 현다 만다와기 아니 딘지 냠마오지 그래서나 자원님 디차 무시워져도서 참 무시워져도서 이내다 소소상도 단단지 토는 슈지 소소소를 앞에 아니 탑교로 좀 통지 아니 샘슌 되는지 딘디치링 그 뭐도서디 아니 야차야탐 상도 단단지 토는 레모도 대응 뭐말이야 딘디지 아니 자원님도 차요마로 왔어
참이시와 카레 참이시와스
직다직 현다 만다와기 아니 수수 찍고치로 탑교 슈차 무시워라스
Geshe visited the plaza and he met a young guy that was having a conversation with Geshe, and Geshe didn't understand much of the things that this person was saying, but since that he was speaking about being discouraged, being depressed, or being discouraged. So Geshe doesn't know if there are just a few people in that state or many, but it seems that there it could be an increasing number of people that feel discouraged or that feel depressed. So it is not that there's someone with great powers, a particular or special person with those special powers that is creating that sense of discouragement. It is rather that we have a certain way of thinking that renders us incapable of acting. This is certainly the case. It is looking down on ourselves. It is being discouraged and thinking that we have no power in a certain situation.
대단지다 benangato inda tindiski pigilia chanchuk semri enninjiri anchik tombani tobigi sherolo soba tindigi and nyamnensiki yomarwas inaya menaya and dusuchi kana kanzunku and jambachi lamagivishi ninzan tuyoinza and so samnalaya samtandato tingichi and nyamtawa suraji tunaya 강유진 팬도 치고 삼성적이니 아니 고만키는 로디기스 din 로디 디sambal라 까까라야지 아니 총강에 사랑하리 딘딜야지 아니 파 미디 dom발 떼온지 코치 아니 마지비 소리지 여바이나 아니 지추 깨제시야기 로 아니 탑시 돈파 남길 땡디기스 아니 까까 가시기 아니 추 아니 깨제시야라 소바 아니 지콜 동tun이 깨제시 라바탄 투스치온디 미마뇽시기 엔베 삼을 콜페 가오총소가 상송가 촌나 딘디 카시 총스라
Geshe doesn't claim to have an advanced practice of bodhicitta, or compassion, to have developed wisdom that realizes emptiness. And yet, he's done some studies in his life, and he met lamas, virtuous friends. So he tries as much as he can to use whatever he's done in his interactions with others. Sometimes he meets with people that seems to be discouraged or depressed. You might meet them in a restaurant or in the shops. And when Geshe recognizes that there is a sense of unhappiness or discouragement, depression, Geshe sometimes tries to talk to that person, either kind of just to indicate that if they want to talk, it's okay. So he talks to them, sometimes shakes hand or holds hand. And so Geshe feels that it is helping sometimes. It is uplifting the mind of that person, or is improving a bit the state of that person.
Yonden semla rale ba seti se yonden semla rale ba la ya chu jamba semla rale ba ta Tsultrim semla rale ba soba semla rale ba tundu semla samden sherab semla rale ba lugos.
In going back to the text, we're going to look at the second point in the reason that proves that by guiding the mind, one comes to God. The point that explains how qualities depend upon the mind. And there are 6 points made in that section: how giving relies upon the mind, ethics, patience, joyous effort, concentration, and wisdom, all of them depend upon the mind.
Tadambu jamba semla rale ba la nis then siudura jambi phashin zoba draw thada ki o pawala teba mai batang tong semba khombi tharchimba kyobos tambu jambi phashin zoba draw thada ki o pawala teba mai banis khade draw o forni jambi phashin paruchina tadon tikam yana kyoba chedar paruchins.
Let's look at the first point in that section. So we're looking at completing the generosity gone beyond, or the perfection of generosity, does not depend on eliminating the poverty of all migrators. If generosity goes beyond, or if perfecting generosity through eliminating the poverty of migrators, since migrators still have poverty, how could the previous refuge have gone beyond?
That is the Kadi Jimbi Passion Zoba, Jimbi Passion Zoba, draw Tadaki or Pola, Pony, Jimbi Passion Zogobaina, Tadon, draw Teba Yud Pate, Yana de Yobicher, Gyobasangi, Cheddar, Jimbi Paru de Chimbo Zote, Zobo Minguros.
So the FND translation is better. It says, if the perfection of generosity were the alleviation of migrating beings' poverty, then since there are still starving or impoverished migrating beings, in what manner the previous protectors perfected it? So looking at Gyatso Dhamma-Rinpoche's commentary to this section, it says, it is taught that the generosity go beyond of the perfection of generosity is perfected through the training of the mind that wishes to give away one's body possession, roots of virtue, including the results, and one's merits to all sentient beings. For this reason, generosity depends on the mind.
Jimbi Paru the Chimba di and Jinsi Yul Ompon Nam Betty and Nyamtali Yonsu Church in Jimbali Zowaresna di 팀 멤버디 단단한주 모습도 통통이어 데려왔어. 일단은 짐 파신 컨트 조버레스 라운디 수디 아니 짐 파신기 아니 문진초 아니 세니게 다 아니 세니 삼비 다 바차드 제바 용수 털바 인자 아니 짐 파신 조버레스 로 짐 파신 조버레스.
So then, thinking of the previous Buddhas, if for them to have perfected the perfection of generosity, they would have had to eliminate all poverty. Well, it is obviously visible to us that they haven't done that. There's still poor people in the world. So to perfect generosity, the perfection of generosity is not contingent on eliminating all the poverty in the world. It is through destroying miserliness together with its imprints completely that one comes to perfect generosity.
진 초고르이냐 도저 상만 용수 돌고야지가 차금도 왔어. 조디 셈라라리기 여버지. 로 셈라라리기 여버다 무역 토니 당 무제도 오지레도 왔다는디로.
So considering the giving of substances, which means material generosity is the main thing that we discuss here, we can give away our body or possessions. Now, giving our possessions or resources, giving our body or parts of the body, it's not that we need to give all of them up. You can still be in a state in which you haven't completely given them away to others and still come to perfect generosity by destroying miserliness together with its imprints.
Dinza ta jimbi pasha zosuti ta jimbi mintuncho ani senni samba saben da jeba pangbana ana jimbi pasha zogorewesna ten and tesang jimbi pasha zotugo dos yana dachambalo sobe ani chik senni samba ani saben da jeba yons pangorda jimbi pasha zogo marwas right.
However, is it the case that simply by eliminating miserliness together with its imprints, you come to complete the perfection of generosity? It is not simply like that, because here is inside to realize that arhats have destroyed miserliness. But we cannot assert that they have perfected generosity, right? So the mere elimination of miserliness with its imprint doesn't mean that one has completed the perfection of generosity.
다 간다 조그레스는 이거 똥이 sembo 콤비 타치면 요나 지미 바시 조버레 순고라스 똥이 sembo 콤비 타치면 요니 니 도버 탐제 제제디 깨고콘나 땅선기 지미 파친 지미 파르친 손디 데데테는 셈예도스.
So the question is, how then do you complete the perfection of generosity? The next point is explaining that in saying that it is brought to completion by familiarizing oneself with the attitude of generosity in verse number 10. Now, verse number 10 in the FMT translation reads, "The perfection of generosity is such to be the mind intending to give all things as well as its results to all beings. Hence, it is simply the mind."
Tenants, Jevena Lu Loncho gets some top tamchi, Tangwi Jebu, Sonum than Cheti, Kyokon Town Devi, Sem Komba Nigi, Kyokon Tam, Simjan Tamjala Tam Debu Nigi, and Devi Sem Komba Nigi, and Jimmy Paruchimo Zova Sondis. Gunzen Tedarna Jimbaten, similar Nietos, she 20 goes.
So verse 10 says, through the mind offering to all sentient beings, all possessions, including the results, generosity goes beyond it. Perfecting generosity is taught, therefore, it is only mine. It is taught that the generosity gone beyond is perfected through the training of the mind that wishes to give away one's body, possessions, roots of virtues, including the results, and one's merits to all sentient beings. Just a second, am I reading through the right verse?
Yep.
So did I read the previous verse? Did I read verse 9?
Last time.
I did read it. Okay. So, sorry?
You read the 10 commentary instead of the 9 commentary.
All right. So no one stopped me. Okay.
We've done it dusted before we realized.
Sorry?
We've done it dusted before we realized.
All right. All right. So I read through the commentary to verse 10, so I don't need to read it again. There you go.
Yes.
Mm.
There kanji kewo kon la tansum gi sede digi and jimbi parshi so ani lo jong torki sem komputorki tian sem komsa di jimba tansa gi yuldi and chori meba and chadang chori on the masomba kanji and kewo kon la ya and be kasoda tan dranyam gu tole pe ro ani chigla gada chigla magawa samla dibdi meba dranyam gu tole samla ya tang de bi sambadi komba tharchim baina ta jimbi parsen zobares ro.
When it says in the first line, through the mind offering to all sentient beings, through that mind, through becoming familiar with the mind, to a point in which the mind is no longer partial, without being biased by anger and attachment, in considering others in an equal way, in an impartial way, without liking some people, disliking others. We complete our habituation with the attitude of giving. That is said to be the completion of generosity. So that depends upon the mind.
Niba sutum la raw le bala ni sutum ki passion zoba penada chi ani soche taw soche ji ki simjin sebala teba mbatan mete batan teba mete batan ponsum komba le zoba gyo tambu sutum ki passion zoba soche ji simjin sebala teba mete bani ta rigwa tanji de chigwa dore sutum ki passion zoba soche ji simjin meba chebala tyogo mai bata nyala soba kanshi tu teda swimming kyo takes she radata nyala soba yu kanshi tu teda tada su kyan su niba mingyo tedi tu mini vicheros.
Let's look at how ethics depends upon the mind. So again, there are 2 points in relation to ethics. It is invalid to say that completing the perfection of ethics depends upon the exhaustion of all sentient beings who kill. Then it is brought to completion by familiarizing oneself with the intention to abandon killing. So looking at the first point in the first couple of points in first 2 lines, in verse 11, it is invalid to say that completing the perfection of ethics depends upon the exhaustion of all sentient beings who kill. First 2 lines in verse 11 say, "Where will the fish and so forth be driven so that they will not be killed?"
Odire diza tadi kanji kongri but chigba dojira ani bena sok cheji gi simjenti sok cheji gi simjenti pe ani omna ani yons zoba omna 지 수강기야 지 아니 소제 문유사지라야 유열지라 아니 제거라 소바 딘지라야 아니 지정 파신 저거 뜨고요나 디 자원이니다 아니 용무시과지로스 용무시과지로스.
It is following exactly the same line of thinking. So if completing the perfection of ethics would depend upon, for example, either killing off everyone that still hasn't been killed, or putting them somewhere in which no one else could harm them to the point of being killed, that of course is, those two options are impossible. So it is not possible to perfect the abstention from killing, for example, by either not having anyone else to kill or by putting them in a place where they cannot be killed.
니버 뽕섬 곰발라 조번 요한스 간지 조 디페나다 착선 뽕야디 로 착선 뽕야디 페나 소제바디야 아니 착섬지 군는 난거리 마즘발람바디야 착섬지 군는 난거리 아니 지 즈마체니 아니 셴기 론즈 트라이얼 소바디야 착섬지 군는 난거리 마zam바조바디야 착섬지 군는 난거리로자 조디 아니 착선 뽕바디레스 로 수수 셈라야 착섬 드마자에 메나 아니 룽아근 남규 카리네고 수롱고 민두쇼라야 드로미시과지 차고라스로.
And then the last couple of lines in that verse says it is brought to completion by familiarizing oneself with the intention to abandon killing. So it is similar to what we have said before with respect to generosity. So also here, abstaining from killing or vice versa, killing depends upon a mind of attachment. Stealing depends upon the mind of attachment. Lying to others depends upon a mind of attachment. Sexual misconduct depends upon a mind of attachment. So not being tainted by attachment, even in the slightest, means that one will not act in such ways of killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and so forth.
균센 테나스 세위 삼바당 마진발렘비 삼바소 공연 삼바 콤버 조바 토발레 수릉기 파르드 춤바 조바 돌 수릉기 파르드 춤바 칸시나 샹라 네버 공연 삼바오 시시비소스.
The last line in this verse says, hence the attainment of the intention of abandonment is explained to be the perfection of ethics. Or you can say that attaining the mind that has abandoned is explained to be the perfection of ethics. Now, looking at the way that Geshe Dhamma Rinchen explains that, for this reason, the morality gone beyond, or perfecting ethics, is achieved by completing the meditation on the mind of abandoning, such as the mind abandoning the thoughts of killing or stealing. From Sutra it says, if the morality gone beyond is explained, it is the intent to give up harming others.
Sumba soba samla rauli gola sum tendan pedan pedun jarawo tambu teni simjem muson namkashi heda shumgi yomuna chuwe semdi chik chomna dadi tamji chumdandas.
In a similar fashion, looking at the next perfection, it comes under the heading of patience relies upon the mind. Now, there are 3 points in relation to that: the meaning, analogy, and applying the analogy to the meaning. Let's begin with the meaning in verse 12. It says, unruly sentient beings are like space. All of them cannot possibly be overcome. But if I overcome the mind of anger alone, this will be equivalent to vanquishing all those foes.
제 조유샘 지구 좀나스 치료 기다리 탐지 아니 총바단 자와 조바조바 이기 공주미유 세발라 뜨거워 많이 바타 심잼 무송바 남가신 타이비 대다군 쇼기 용대 예네셈 때는 문항비체로 대나 소바심라우소스.
Let's look at the commentary to verse 12. So it says, patience is completed by destroying one's anger, which equals destroying all external enemies. It is not achieved through the extinction of the objects of one's anger. This is conclusive because unsubdued sentient beings equal space, and it is impossible to destroy them all. Therefore, also patience depends on the mind.
디르다디서 타가란 라와스라 페나 콘주 셈치고 좀 두바이나 아니 자탐지 좀버던 자와치 로 마도지 아니 콘주 제사기 미유기 다카스다 직된 타니 용달에 직소소 마가사기 사기 다운 디 아니 용조 세구요나 디자오니니 용무식바지로스 아니 직소소래야 아니 뉘니 직 아니 카탕이 야블로네 카탕이 직 제대로 강의바디 간지 소수 셈나라야 아니 콘트롤 까투바이나 아니 가르무 가르시에 되바이나야 가르무 가르남규 땜바이나야 아니 소수문에 자차고 말았어 자 송인 때와디 콘트롤 임바디다 세우쇼치.
If you come to destroy anger, solely anger, you will thereby be destroying all of your enemies. In that, if you have destroyed anger, it would be impossible to develop a sense of dislike to others. And because of that, and it would be also impossible to act in ways such as killing those that you dislike if you're no longer controlled by anger. So there might be those that criticize you straight to your face. There might be those that criticize you behind your back. If you destroy anger, if you have stopped anger, you will not be angry with all that criticism waged against you in your face or behind your back. There would be no enemies if you have no anger.
니버페니스 사딘 데다 코요드 디니 코요 칼라나 랑티 잠기 코요는 사딘 탐지 요단라스.
Moving on to the next point, which employs an analogy. Let's look at this verse. It says, to cover the whole earth with leather, where could the leather come from? The leather of the soles of one's shoes equals covering the whole earth.
Kambala Thermal Sobe Liver Pombi Tender Sadin Dada Tamju Koyo de Dini Koyo Kalati Tedaya Thermal Sobe Nebala Lanti Tamju Koyeni Rangi Kamba Yoni Sadin Tamju Yobo than Daviches.
This analogy here is quite clear. It says in the commentary, where would one find enough leather to cover the whole earth to prevent one's feet from being harmed by thorns and other sharp objects on the ground? Having leather as the soles of one's shoes will do the trick and prevent the feet from being harmed by thorns, sharp stones, and the like. It equals covering the whole earth.
Sumba Pedun Javanese. 대신 주로 뭐야 다기 치도 말랑기 다기 샘도 치도치 제노도 구치 시고스.
Then the next verse, number 14, connects the analogy with the meaning. So it says, relating the meaning to the example, similarly, I do not oppose external phenomena. I should reverse this mind of mine, Where is the need to oppose others?
데르다 베테신도 수르 균유지 용고고 양 타다 다기 치도버치 만한기스 디 용 미시고지로 다기 셈데 율 대달라 미니 콩로 깨발리 치도버차이 디 콩발리 아니 소버조번 유지 초유 유시는 다기 치도디 도미니시 도장 그거면 비처럼 쓴 거.
Says in a commentary to this verse, similar to the analogy, it is impossible to oppose all harmful external phenomena. Instead, one focuses one's mind on these objects and reverses the mind from generating anger. And through familiarization in this way, patience is completed. To oppose the objects of anger is impossible and unnecessary.
Dressing di songing di semi badi chidani chutamji semi tabatsam song yoros in the chutamji semi tabatsamina nyina semi tabatsam and dry in the semi tabatsam in badi ko the shitrubaros in the dinanikan when the dress di susu is semlaya control mevaina parumi kungani ko namgyurda the karmu karten deva inaya ani suzu semlaya magiba yonyadi penyu redasra penyu.
Enemies are created by one's mind. Well, in general, we say that all phenomena are imputed by mind. It is an established basis being established, such as enemies are merely imputed by mind. The ones that are close to your heart are merely imputed by mind. But when particularly we look at enemies and how enemies are created by one's mind, then if we decrease the anger that we have through the cultivation of patience, that whatever you get from others, if they're treating you harshly, in the sense that if the body language is negative, if the expression is negative, you'll have very few occasions in which you'll be affected by that and get angry.
Namgyuri sikpeche tandare ko ji yongde di tsamzalaya ane choa mandrawato chiki tengi samwarda di choa yongde di nganzu gi lu korang ki ton lu di nganzu lu di ta dungha gi lu inza ko dungha gi ane tamji gi tenchingi lu ji sonza lu dindi ji kini yodebe kalaya so dramatic
So then how do we think about it? Well, Geshe is offering his own way of thinking about it. So suppose that you have no anger. Having no anger, still you encounter a situation in which someone's displaying a physical body language that is not positive, that is negative, or they're saying something that is nasty to you. Are there still certain sensations that arise in you if you have no anger? Well, Geshe reckons that there could still be some physical sensations that will occur on that basis. After all, we say that this body is a body of suffering, in that acts as the basis for all suffering that arises for us. So it might be that mentally you will have no anger, but there might be still some effect, like, for example, certain sensations that arise in one's body.
Georgia the red was ra. Lutan not Georgia on the Betty and Pilia chick and Sona Mandra chick ra. Tandi Nicolia, then Delia chick, Susu put a pomo, that chick Susu Satan, Susu Pama, Islam shooting Pilia, Chichi to Yadi, and give a Javanin Betty and so logo laundry D and Liu Tony. Liu then D Tony, Yunguyabadi and Silros ra.
So we change between different states of birth. Although we change our state of birth, it's not that the self is changed or replaced. It is not that the mind is replaced. The only thing that is replaced is our body and speech. So in that sense, when we think of our interactions with each other, might be on the basis of being born as a man or as a woman, having relationship with those around us, with our parents, partners, and so forth. Since what is changed in different situations is body and speech, it is suitable, it is possible that the feelings or the sensations that will arise on that basis are different.
어디를 간지 띵자 나나줄이야 깔카슈로디 샘기 차담모스인데 차건자 디나니 베나타치 컨트롤이 르이 아니 갑투 코란이야 난조 마기바 소비어디 난조 뇽유 주고로스 띵자 아니 컨트롤 셀이 굿 빠사와니니 메바디 아니 지단 거 자원이니 메바디 통투와이나 아니 컨트롤디 까야래야 로 아니 팬도 용구였어레스 로 아니 팀주 공부진 아니 공지 땐 토바이나 아니 콘드르기 네마투와치 콘드르 마용와치 로 남유 카르 통나야 양 성성저지마도치 딜이야 아니 대치 아니 소소 마기와 슈치 데데야디 텐데 메오 소투고서레스 로
So then looking at ourselves and at the time in which we are governed by anger, attachment, and ignorance, we can see how these afflictive states of mind, such as anger creates unhappiness in our mind. And in that sense, since anger creates unhappiness in our mind, there's no purpose whatsoever to anger. So if we can see that, if we see that anger is futile, we'll get the benefit of coming to put a stop to anger. So we want to think about it again and again to the point in which we become habituated with recognizing the drawbacks of anger, so that will assist us in arresting anger. And if we do that, we'll be able to create some space in the mind rather than being made unhappy with anger. We'll find better ability, opportunity to put a stop to it.
Redimando manzo michingi samloya nganju ngone kango chituk maras ro michingi samlo di khorangi samlo tangdan chigje dia khorangi komshi jigi tone jogor mande di ani nganju rojigi da telekya ani kango chimutu wadi sanji chomden digita michingi samlo di kango nang tuyo mar nganju telekya tu marwa tinza ko samlo tangdan chigje komshijire shikajire sambigi samlo di tolaya shatuwaina ani suzu semdi manchuyak kanji suzu magiba manyuya yaji yadamba pendo yosaris ro
And also we take into consideration that we cannot put a stop to somebody else's way of thinking. It's not that we control the mind of others. We cannot put a stop to their way of thinking. Whatever they might be thinking of, whatever habits they have, it's their habits. We cannot put a stop to that. So if we recognize that, if we continue to think that, well, they might be acting in a certain way or thinking in a certain way, but this is their nature. This is their way of thinking. This is due to their habits. We're able to use that in order to reduce anger, to put a stop to anger and be less unhappy about certain situations.
Jiva Zongju Sem the Ralubanis, the Chibada, Semser Chigin Jevokan, Sang the Soba Yimbatar, Lunga Jibin Jebuya, Jobashimbi determines.
Let's move on to the next verse. Looking again at the commentary, we're now going to look at verse 15 that explains how joy Sefet relies upon the mind. It says, although the result of generating clear mind is Brahma and so forth, the results along with body and speech will be weak in conduct. Therefore, it is not like that.
The dig so the that Zongju similar Alivares, and Jadanga Lunga Yisum Tony, and give your Dainia, and shoot the Mason Chishu di, and Sem Givat Top Chigris, Sems and Giva Page, and Sari Chigi, and Pena. Given Drevati Pena Kovi on the Chebaino, and it's Sambi Nella Soba, Tamji Kiji, Gyum Nibati, and Samgi, such a things in Toki, Kigoela Soba, Dingoras, Lugi, and Dibonga to Chiata, Nagi, and Devjo Chielo Soba Digi, and some Diki Yungo Maras, Visitor Sungosre.
When it says, although the result of generating a clear mind is Brahma and so forth, it refers to a result that is brought forth through cultivating certain virtues. So we cultivate virtues with our body, speech, and mind. However, of the three, the most powerful virtue is the one created by mind, the virtue of the mind. Mind being just mere clarity and cognition. So when we think of the results of such mind, developing virtue in such a mind, even in samsara, through developing virtuous mental state, we can attain results of a Brahma state of existence, a Brahma rebirth, which is regarded as a powerful state of rebirth. That comes through developing a particular type of concentration that is able to remain in a stable way, placed upon a certain object. So that is not made possible through just physical virtues or verbal virtues. It is particularly attributed to mental virtues.
Zongju Kyang Komba Tachimba, Semla Ravetis, Samden Tambi Yumju Sobo Komba the Truvi Sem, Sarvo Yumju Diva Chusi Chikibin Jevian, Sambala Sobo, Nesu Kiva Imbatat, Sem Topdan, Sem Topdan the Mandelna, Lutan Chibi, Semgi, Jevian, Trochuyu, Choba Shembi, Tether Samden Tambosu, Kim Nuba Mimbi. Reading
through Geshe Dhammarinpoche's commentary to this section, it says, the perfecting of the familiarization and enthusiasm, joy Sefet, also depends upon the mind. A clear mind of joy for meditating on an absorption of the first form realm brings about results contained within the grounds of absorption, such as rebirth in the place of Brahma, in a Brahma state. If one's actions are unrelated to such a strong mind, then one's mind is endowed with actions of body and speech, and such actions which with lesser enthusiasm do not have the ability to produce a mind of the first form realm. Such a result depends on a strong mind.
Lore. Tangaba something similar halubani. Devju tan katukun yurin tusu che semji yon chibini teni ripi temesons.
Let's look at the next perfection, the fifth one, which explains how concentration or absorption relies upon the mind. That's verse 16. Now, looking at this very verse, it says, the knower of reality thought that even if recitation and hardships are practiced for long periods of time, they would be meaningless if the mind is distracted elsewhere.
Reda something person said something person tia and pigi sem shen yang chi and lu da nga ki lu toni ta chi and katu khandaj temba in yang and sem toni deju kazus yuru che yang and sem shin yang toni droba ina and something person zoyagi. Now
we're looking at the way a way to complete the perfection of absorption. Now it says that here you might be undertaking certain physical and verbal activities. You might be putting a lot of effort into them and performing them for a very long time. However, if you do that with a mind that is distracted, a mind that is constantly subject to wandering off, you will not at all be able to complete the perfection of absorption.
Something comes to thing in the truth, and Lamram comes to the Soviet shiftion, Chawdi, Nanzulea, Letangovella, Lenchucho, Roti, Niesamna. Ani jangala mutsunga bachim biwi ani langram chen jin chong song na langram jin di pen ngada ngada gi le tangwo la ya ngone thane gi chik lag len deshu chik ani khorang gi tug komba kha imba dima ani sim chin kwesha ma da telepath chik ngori gi ken tam ne pe ani gaza che de la so samsam la ya ta ribi gi dremena and Gaza Chon, the Penota South Chagados, but did mind but Siu Shuch Gabadi, and in Chidang on the Drogios, on the Drodigore, and in Penangadrogina, and Kichish di Lamram di Tigudina, and Karanto Kashi, and the Lamram you wish at with us.
So we're looking at different practices. We're, for example, looking at training in concentration, practicing absorption, practicing the stages of the path. So if we want to take up a really accessible and easy presentation of the way to understand all the ins and outs of those practices, Geshe feels that the text that is making is most accessible is Lama Tsongkhapa's middling presentation of the stages of the path to enlightenment. So Lama Tsongkhapa composed different texts. There is the extensive version, the middling version, the abridged presentation of the stages of the path to enlightenment. And if you want to find an explanation that makes it readily accessible for you to put it into practice, you should look at, in Geshe's mind, you should look at the middling presentation of the stages of the path to enlightenment by Lama Tsongkhapa. So rather than looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's intention that is extensively put forward through explaining the object of negation, supported by reasons, by scriptural quotations and so forth, which requires a lot of background knowledge that you should have in order to understand Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation. The one that is putting it in a way that is really straightforward, also being supported with reasons and so forth, is the middling presentation of the stages of the path to enlightenment. So Geshe is teaching this text regularly on the Friday morning teaching, and in the different classes that Geshe teaches, it feels that this is of the most important class. Lama Tsongkhapa's middling middling presentation of the steps of the path to enlightenment. So it says that it's very important, and yet not many people here at least come to those teachings.
어디를 가서나 간주 숑 까붕아 나 니추시서 용거 쓰려고 말더라. 먼저 숑 까붕아 참상 짓다 못응인지라야. 다 야슈디 라 내가 참은 상대요. 야슈디 당 나랑 제수라 라랑 진들 하지 메교를 지그도스라.
So it's for most of us, it is impossible to study the 5 classical systems, the 5 classics. But since currently we're incapable of studying all of them, one text that combines all the essential points from the 5 classics is Lama Tsongkhapa's middling presentation of enlightenment, of the steps of the path to enlightenment.
Hima Perlia, the Chicken Digda, Hima Perlia, Pena, and Tasama Ingire, and Pena Seracheta Vina, and Manchelia, and Kembu Tony, and Lamram Gi, Chick Nayachik, Luxujoris, Lamram Chimuchanzan, Kembore Kalaya, Lamram Chimuchanzan, Tiagi. And long look the patient trust shambala yosaris. And chisu yagalaya, Tangabjunga between you ton Yagala Yoni, and D and it changing D and it Zugmatun, the Jurumbu Jilaya, Lav Kalaya, and Taji Chedang Shonkabungagi, the Lomi D any Chesus Chanzan Nanchin, Jupiter Nanchin, and Haram Gishi turning Mambo Day, Pakoj, the Yarum Chita, Tasala, Lomi Yam to us. Do songe that Domin Yabu Yushudi, and Yamdo, Chini Mundo Asente, and Yarum Chipe, and a Carso that Shesa Machina, and Shere, and a Tabu Tony, and a dancing Cambosolia, Calabtus Nanchi, and a Shini, and a Laurum Chini Sugris. Soon that Lopez Chu Hax Maton Droyo Mares. Tis a Laurum Nengachish. Raman to Gungi, Pigilia, Susu Gomja, and Kalina, and then Lamram Benajindo, the tattoo, and the Chansan Sunday, Jajata Malaysia's rock.
At Tsultrim monastery, back in the days in Tibet, most abbots used to give a guiding commentary to the steps of the path to enlightenment. So it was done in a traditional way. That was one of the things that the abbots used to do. But then in the years following up from 1959, when so many Tibetans fled to exiles and the monasteries were reestablished in India, it seems that they weren't able to do it for a very long time. At least it was done before Tsultrim monastery in Tibet. Geshe assumes it was also done in other monasteries as well. But then, having gone into exile, they weren't able to do it for a very long time. So indeed, monks from the great monastic seats still continued with the studies of the 5 classics. They studied those texts, they set 4 exams, they completed the studies and graduated as Geshes. But at some point in time, His Holiness the Dalai Lama was quite strong or peaceful in one of the talks that he gave down south, and he said that it seems that the study programs are declining. People are no longer studying Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim tradition. So His Holiness said that quite strongly. And then this tradition of giving guiding instructions based on Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation was reignited in the monastery. At least it has been around for not more than 10 years.
and Lotava Lamring water to see dear Tsultrim Danger than David on it, Kazutu Chivius, and do shown Gaurumchi bet and dishes sonchi, and it be any Shasamashina, and Rambal Jalchin, and those nonsense, and so Lord they will pay chasons. The Gunding is some time the Gaurumchi and Chishin, the Gaurumchi, Combat Tomba Chonson, Samson, and it songs rather the task treasure to read.
Yes, I was in India in January and February. He and together with a group of a few other people have managed to have an audience with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, in which Geshe told His Holiness of the study program here at the center. He told His Holiness of the advanced study program conducted over 4 years, and also the annual Lamrim course that is done together with the presentation of the Four Truths. And His Holiness response to that was that the study program here is spot on. It is important to teach it in this way. So Geshe felt after that, felt quite satisfied, quite reassured that whatever we do here is done in a way that is making His Holiness be happy or content with our study program.
Something similar with the courses, something you passion Zobayan, Chingo than Trashi, Tower Govatan, Gover Gu, Yiji Simbi, similar Rality, Zumhaji Demjetan, Yone La Sobi, Kat Kun, usually to Cheba Chegan, Sam Shendu Yama Cheban, then Teni Riba, Sanji Dole, Galonta, Debala, Semi, Katuta, Katola Soban, Jevu Mevan Gurus.
We read through verse 16. Let's look at the commentary to this verse. The completion of mental stabilization or absorption gone beyond depends on a clear mind free from mental excitement and mental sinking and held by the mental application of renunciation. Although one practices the recitation of mantras and austerities such as Nyungne for a long time, the mind is distracted to other objects. From the Buddha's sutras, bhikkhus, austerities, prayers, and so forth that distract the mind to the desire do not have a result. They are shown to be meaningless because of not giving the desired result.
Yes.
Shall we leave it here for now? So I'll put the prayers on the screen. Where are your prayers? Did I choose to?
Yeah.
Just a question with how the texts actually work. Is it that the text that you mentioned on Friday, is that derived from the Lamrim Chenmo? So say the Lamrim Chenmo is an umbrella that sort of derives from that, or is it? I can't really get it clear in my head where all the texts come from.
You mean where Lama Tsongkhapa's texts come from? Or do they all come from the Lamrim Chenmo? Or do,
is it like a commentary on that and then it's expanded, or is it something else on the top of the umbrella? And it is a separate text, isn't it, from the Lamrim Chenmo itself?
Which
The
separate?
one that you mentioned on Friday. Yeah.
저는 그런 게 Lamrim Chedrin Chun Sumse di Shung Mindabe Siaman Lamrim Chemo Kung Re Ama Zaware Tan Lamrim Jing Tan Chung di Jawachires Kanachinas.
That's all Mumadi Lamdrin Redos, Choshipanda Antishan Sebi, and Lamdrin Dres, the Lamdrin Laya, and in Java Kibata, and Duba, Jina Soba, and Jerome Ching Zesha Gute, and Lamdrin Chen Jing Chus Lagoras.
So the root text for the Lamrim is Atisha's text, the lamp for the path to enlightenment. That is the root text. Now Lama Tsongkhapa on that basis composed an extensive presentation, that's the Lamrim Chenmo, or an extensive commentary, sorry, the Lamrim Chenmo, a middling commentary, and also a short commentary to Atisha's text.
In silence of West Mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. Approach and meditate. Please remain you who uphold the streams moral ways, satisfy and prepare our hopes.
Sustaining, preserving, and spreading monastic doctrine.
We masterfully accomplish the limits and praise. To help myself and others who disciples, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe.
Zoom.